Hey traders, John Fortune here with this week's weekly Forex forecast for the 26th of August to the 30th of August 2019. As always, we're going to start off by looking at US dollar index and oil before running through a number of markets, looking at the key levels of support and resistance in the process. I'm also going to be highlighting some of the targets that we're going to be looking for in the coming week and also for the weeks ahead. So I hope you're all having a nice weekend. Let's jump over to the charts and see where the money is this week. So the first market we're going to look at is the US dollar index. Now, last week we had this big sell-off to the downside on Friday. A combination of the US President Donald Trump coming out and stating he wanted to see a weaker dollar to aid US competitiveness, and also an increase in the tensions in the trade war between the US and China. These dual things have actually seen the dollar weaken over the last week, and this is good news for us as traders because we did point out in the last video that the dollar has kind of had no clear direction. It's been bouncing around ever since it traded into the key area of resistance over here and sold off. It's just been moving sideways. So it was nice to see a catalyst, nice to see something starting to move the markets and a bit of volatility, because this brings with it nice opportunities. So very simply put, for any TFT members watching this, we will go through this in more detail and the implications of what's going on fundamentally in the live session on Monday. But technically speaking, for trades going into next week, what we're focused on now is further declines to the downside, and we're looking for some follow through here from this sell-off. So very simply put, if we can get a pullback, and if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance at 97.90, this is going to be a great place next week to start to look for further declines to the downside in the US dollar. And we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 96.39. So all in all, we will be going into next week with a bearish bias on the US dollar. So next market we're going to look at is crude oil. Now we start the week below a key area of broken support from the past, looking to turn resistance at the 55.310. If we can get a pullback, and if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken support turning resistance, this is going to be a great place to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set at a 50.42. So next market we're going to look at is euro dollar. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to turn support at the 1.11040. If we can get a pullback, and as always, if we can get a pullback, preferably and retest broken resistance turning supports, this will be a fantastic place going into next week to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set, the 1.1199, and if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.1342. The next market we're going to look at is pound dollar. Now we start the week above a key area of broken resistance from the past, looking to potentially turn support at the 1.21650. This is actually a confirmed bearish inverse head and shoulders pattern for the time being. So we are looking for further advances to the upside, especially with the combination of this pattern and weakness in the US dollar index. If we can get a pullback going into next week, and we can get a pullback all the way to broken resistance turning support, this is going to be the best place next week because it will give best risk to reward to start to look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking at initiating longs up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1.2373, and if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key area of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1.2610. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Japanese yen. Now last week we highlighted the 106.54 for you guys to start to look for a sell-off to the downside in the Japanese yen. We did have a really nice sell-off to the downside from this area last week. So very simply put, going into this week, we started to approach the target set from last week at the 104.70. If we can get a pullback, and we're probably not going to get a retest just because of this, how steep this sell-off is. But if you are not involved from last week, if we get a pullback, let's say to the 106.20, anywhere in this area is going to present another great opportunity to start to look for those bearish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set from last week at the 104.70. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking down towards the next key area of support to the downside and target 2 at the 103.76. So next market we're going to look at is Aussie dollar. Now last week we highlighted 0.69050 to start to look for a pullback into this area. We've done nothing over the last 2 weeks. I mean, we have literally gone nowhere in the Aussie dollar. So very simply put, going into next week, we are looking for further declines to the downside overall. But if we get that weaker dollar next week, this is when we may start to see a movement back in the Aussie dollar towards the 0.69050. If that happens, this is the move that will likely happen next week if we get that weakening of the dollar. And that means that going into the following week, so not next week, but the following week after, that is when we could potentially start to look for further declines to the downside from the 6905. So just to confirm in the Aussie dollar, you can see that actually, even with a weak dollar, the Aussie US dollar has not really moved anywhere. This gives us another hint that actually the Australian dollar in and of itself is quite weak. So very simply put, we're still looking for declines to the downside, but just bear in mind that if we do get a weak dollar next week, we may get this pullback to 0.69050. It won't pull back and decline all in 1 week because that would be too much, but we may get this pullback now next week with a weaker dollar. So next market we're going to look at is New Zealand dollar. Now, as you can see, we're actually trending to the downside in the New Zealand dollar. We are still structured to the downside, even though we're looking for a decline in the US dollar index next week. What this means is the next move we would be looking for is declines to the downside, but with a weaker dollar, this could be quite risky. So very simply put, you can either filter out the New Zealand dollar going into next week and just simply say, well, because the New Zealand dollar in and of itself is a weak currency, I don't want to trade it against a weak dollar, because then you'd be trading 2 weak currencies, and really you want to trade strong versus weak currencies. Or if you want to, you can wait to see if you can get this reversal play, which would be a clean break above the 0.6420. And if we can get a pullback and a retest in this area, this would be our first opportunity to start to look for bullish patterns and formations in the New Zealand dollar. And we can at that point look to initiate longs up towards the next key area resistance, the upside and the target set at the 0.6505. So you can either do two things. You can either filter this out next week if you so wish, or wait for that break above resistance to see if it comes, because if we get a weaker dollar, we could see this resistance area fail, and then you could look for this potential reversal setup going into next week in the New Zealand dollar. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar Swiss franc. Now last week we highlighted the 0.98150 to start to look for declines to the downside. We did break above it slightly, but then we did get this big sell-off to the downside. So very simply put, going into next week, we're looking for further declines to the downside in this market. If we can get a pullback, and preferably if we can come back and retest broken support, turning resistance at the 0.98150. This would be a great place going into next week, and would also provide us with a head and shoulders pattern to start to look for further declines to the downside in the US dollar Swiss franc. And we're going to be looking at initiating shorts down towards the next key area of support to the downside and the target set, the 0.9635. So next market we're going to look at is US dollar CAD. Now, last week we were looking for a pullback towards the 1.3200. We didn't do anything in the US dollar CAD again last week, just highlighting the fact the last 2 weeks have been very, very choppy. But we are looking for further declines potentially in the dollar this week. We're still structured to the upside, so very simply put, we're looking for a pullback towards 1.3200. If we get the weakness in the dollar, then this is the move we could be seeing this week. And once again, once this move is completed, it may be the following week that we start to get this bounce to the upside in the US dollar CAD. So very simply put, we are still looking overall at the moment, as long as we're above the 13200, we're looking for further advances to the upside. But if we get that weakening of the US dollar next week, look for this pullback into the 1.3200. And it may be that the following week we start to get those bullish formations and patterns from this area, and we can start to look back up towards the targets again at the 1.3355. And of course, if we can get above here at the 1.3429. And last but not least, we have gold. Now, we've been bullish on gold for quite a while now for anybody who's been following these forecasts. And once again, we've had this rally to the upside, especially as we've had this weakening of the dollar. So going into next week, gold to the upside is certainly something we're going to be looking at. If we can get a pullback, and if we can get a pullback and a retest of broken resistance, turning support at 1504.67, this is going to be a great place next week to start to once again look for those bullish formations and patterns. And we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance to the upside and the target set at the 1555.00. And if we can get a break through here, we're going to be looking up towards the next key of resistance to the upside and target 2 at the 1589.90. So that is it from me for this week, guys. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please let me know by liking, sharing and subscribing. A big thank you to everyone who does that on a regular basis, and a big thank you to everyone who has subscribed to the channel so far. I want to wish you all once again a fantastic weekend, and I hope you all have a profitable week next week. The only thing left for me to say, guys, is take care and don't forget to trade safely.